after multiple different leaders, different teams running up front, even having problems at times, lots of chaos happening at the end there with rain, and even with Max Verstappen starting at the back of the field, this race still managed to have a Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, or a Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen 1-2. You know, obviously, I guess it's been a while since we've had one of those, but still, it's been the most common 1-2, it seems like, for the last year or so. But man, what a chaotic race, especially at the end there. The Russian Grand Prix was this morning where I am, bright and early, 7 a.m. But yeah, it was a pretty weird, it was a wacky race. I mean, last year was the first ever F1 race that I actually woke up and watched was the Russian Grand Prix, the 2021. So I've been watching for a full year now, woo. But from what I've heard is that Sochi, the track they go to in Russia, it's not been that great for a race usually, but it seemed like a decent race today. You know, yeah, sure, guys got stuck behind each other and stuff, but the ending was chaotic and fun. I mean, the different leaders we saw today, the different teams we saw up front. The front row, first of all, was a Ferrari and McLaren, Lando Norris on pole, Carlos Sainz starting second on the front row. Sainz, he didn't get the greatest initial start, but then after that was able to get, what do they call it? Not draft, but whatever the European word for draft is. I forget what it's called at the moment. I'm really tired. So, yeah, he gets one of those drafts, and he goes up and he passes Lando Norris. He leads the first few laps of the race, actually. But Lando Norris comes back later on, just a few laps later, really, and is able to pass Carlos Sainz, which we didn't see on TV live. They showed after the fact that Lando Norris was ahead, and I was like, what? How'd you miss that? But okay. But yeah, what else? I mean, there was so much that happened in this race. There were different strategies. Some guys pitted within the first 15 laps of the race. I think they were trying to do a two-stop strategy maybe, but guys like Lance Stroll, George Russell, who started up front, started up in third. But yeah, Lance Stroll had a tremendous start. I think he started at 8th or 9th, ended up in 4th at one point. But yeah, like Stroll, Russell, some of these other guys, they pitted really, really early in order to try to have a different strategy. And, you know, if the race played out, I don't think it would have worked out for him if I'm remembering correctly, because that other strategy where Norris pitted about halfway in the race, Lewis Hamilton, Daniel Ricciardo, other guys pitted with that strategy, and it did not, or that would have worked better, obviously, because up until the rain, it was Hamilton, Norris up front, and then obviously Ricciardo, even with his bad pit stop, he was up there. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton got his 100th career win, the first ever F1 driver to reach 100 career wins. That is a huge deal, huge milestone. Say what you will about Lewis Hamilton. If you like him, if you don't like him, you got to respect the amount of talent that he has, the amount of skill. 100 career wins in Formula One. No one has ever done it before in Formula One. You look at some of the legends, Schumacher, Senna, Prost, Lauda, no one has ever done it. Well, Lewis Hamilton has done it. Obviously, the most dominant stint being with Mercedes. He joined the team in, 2013, I think? Correct me if I'm wrong there. He's won 6 of his championships with Mercedes, won 1 with McLaren, has won a lot of races with Mercedes. And yeah, that ended up being a good move, safe to say, leaving McLaren for Mercedes. I think it was questioned at the time, but that ended up being a really good move. But the end of this race, of course, Lewis Hamilton's 100th win did not come easy. Started 4th on the grid, had a bad start, fell back to 7th actually on the initial start. Was able to get back up to 6th, maybe even 5th if I'm remembering correctly. Needed some pit strategy to help him out a bit. But he was somehow able to figure out a way to get back up front, get up to 2nd place after the last kind of guys pitted on around lap 30. Lando Norris came out in the lead, had about an 8 or 9 second lead in Lewis Hamilton. He just kept on chopping into the lead. He kept on closing and closing and closing in on Lando Norris. And it was kind of like watching the British Grand Prix all over again. Remember, in that one, it was Charles Leclerc leading that race. He led the majority of that one. And Lewis Hamilton, of course, he had that 10-second time penalty back in the British Grand Prix from wrecking Max Verstappen. And after his penalty, after his pit stop, he came out 10, 15 seconds back, and he just kept closing, closing on the Ferrari, but this time it was Lewis Hamilton closing and closing and closing on the McLaren. And with under 10 to go, he just kind of, I guess he kind of got stuck behind Lando Norris, you know. Norris was able to just kind of maintain a 1 to 1.25 second gap, and Lewis Hamilton couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't use the DRS. He just couldn't get there. It's like he stalled out at a second. And so Lewis Hamilton stuck there in second, and then it happened. With about 8 to go, the reports of rain were saying, hey, it's about to rain, it's about to rain. Like, we're not saying this as a joke. Like, it's about to start raining here. And, of course, guys are like, okay, well, get the tires ready just in case. And, yeah, maybe we'll see you, maybe we won't. But, yeah, there were some sprinkles. It started lightly raining, and Lando Norris missed a corner. He went wide, and Lewis Hamilton caught up, and they were right next to each other. But then Lando was able to pull ahead again. And then all of a sudden, on one part of the track, it's raining pretty decently to where the track is wet. But on the other side of the track, it's dry. So it's like half the track is dry, part of the track is wet completely, part of the track is barely wet. Like, what do we do? Do we keep the soft tires or the racing tires on, or do we switch to the intermediates and the wet tires, whatever you want to call them? So there was a lot of thoughts going on in these last few laps, and then it happened. It started to actually rain on most of the track, and most of the drivers pitted for intermediate tires, but the front two were so far ahead of third place. I think they had like a 40-second gap, but because the gap was so narrow between Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris, neither of them wanted to give up the position. Neither of them wanted to give up the race win potentially. So they tried to last it out as long as they can, but Lewis Hamilton finally gave up and came into pit with about 4 laps to go. Lando Norris stayed out on his racing tires and thought he could potentially make it. He said he didn't need them. The team was calling him in saying, look, you need rain tires. Look, you need rain tires. And Lando said, no, I don't. It's fine. We're going to do this. And I can't blame Lando for wanting to not give up the win, because once Lewis pitted and got those wet tires, or intermediate tires, you knew that he was going to start closing in on Lando. I think he initially came out of the pits about 25, 26 seconds behind, and I think the average time of like a pit stop into pit road, out of pit road with a pit stop is about 24 seconds. So if they pitted at the same time, had a good stop, Lando would have still been ahead, but Lewis pitted first, and you knew Lando was going to lose time because it was wet, because he was on racing tires and not intermediate tires. And that's what happened. By the first lap, Lewis had already cut the lead to 19 seconds. And, you know, by that point, Lando Norris has made his bed. Like, you can't pit now, or you're basically just giving Lewis Hamilton the win. So you got to stick it out at this point. And, of course, it starts raining really, really hard right as this happens. As the decision is made, Lando starts struggling for grip. He starts sliding off the track. He starts going wide in corners. And then finally it happens. Lewis Hamilton had cut the lead to only 8 seconds in less than 2 laps because of the poor conditions on the track and because Lando Norris had stayed out. And Lando Norris slid off the racetrack. Lewis Hamilton took the lead and eventually the win. Lando Norris came back, came to pit road, pitted for those tires, ends up finishing 7th. But it's such a tough call. It would have been his first career Formula One victory. I can't blame him for wanting to stay out and want to try to win that thing, you know, get his first win. There's only a couple laps to go. It can't get much worse. The weather, right? But at the same time, your team's been telling you it's going to rain. It's going to rain. It's going to pick up. The rain's going to get worse. So Lando Norris, that one's not on the team. They were calling him and they're saying, look, you need tires. It's like that scene in Cars. You need tires, you idiot. But I can't blame him for being aggressive, wanting to get his first career win. But, you know, also, you know, it is his fault. You know, it's not the team's fault. Lando Norris made that call by himself. He didn't listen to the team. Whereas Lewis Hamilton, he didn't listen to the team. At first, they called him in one lap, but he didn't come in until the next because he was trying to see what the conditions were like. And, yeah, that's a learning point for Lando Norris for sure. He's gonna learn a lesson for that one. But he's going for his first win. I applaud the aggressiveness, I guess, but yes, 100th career win for Lewis Hamilton after that. Max Verstappen, who started at the back of the grid, ends up second, but I guess that leads to our next point. let's go to the finishing results. So, as I said, Lewis Hamilton won this race. His 100th win in Formula One. No one has ever done that before, as I've said multiple times in this video. Such a great accomplishment. So many wins, so many tracks, so many countries. I mean, he's won everything. He's won everywhere. The 7-time world champion retakes the championship lead also in the driver's standings. He was behind 4 or 5 points coming into this one, behind Max Verstappen. Ends up coming out 2 or 3 points ahead of Max Verstappen. So overall, really good weekend. And of course, Mercedes has never lost at Sochi. Rosberg, Bottas, and Hamilton have won all the races. It's only been 6 or 7 races, but they've won all the races at Sochi. So yeah, a really good weekend for Lewis Hamilton to get that win, to retake the points lead. His first win since July back at his home race in Great Britain at Silverstone. So yeah, really good momentum for them. Next race is at Turkey. I think he's the defending winner there, so that'll be interesting. But championship battle's been really fun so far, so hopefully it continues to be really fun. Max Verstappen finishes second. How he did that, I don't know. The rain strategy was crazy there at the end. The rain was... It messed everything up. Hamilton would have probably finished behind Norris. I think Hamilton said after the race he didn't know if he could get by Norris in those past few laps if it stayed dry. But let's just say Hamilton finishes second. Verstappen would have probably finished 6th or 7th if I'm remembering correctly. He had made up so much, from starting last on the grid. And they had planned that. They had the 3-place grid penalty from Italy after that crash. So they went ahead and got a new engine, power unit, something like that. And so they just took a full-blown, back of the grid penalty. They just went straight to the back. So they started last today, and they end up finishing second. Very impressive run. The rain definitely helped there at the end. They would have finished 6th or 7th, as I said, somewhere around there. But the rain definitely helped them at the end. Ends up getting a second-place finish. So to finish second, obviously to your championship rival, but considering you started last, you still finished second and only lose 7 points to him. Really good weekend for Red Bull, I think, or at least Max Verstappen. Red Bull as a whole falls behind even more in the constructor standings. I think they're more than 30 points behind on that one, but Max Verstappen still very much alive in the championship hunt. So once again, I hope that championship battle continues. Carlos Sainz with a podium finish. He has been pretty good with Ferrari this year. He left McLaren after last year to join Ferrari, and he has done good so far. I think this is his 3rd podium of the year, Monaco, Hungary, and now Russia. So he's had a good year at Ferrari. In fact, I think he's ahead of his teammate in the point standings. From what I've understood in my short time as a Formula One fan, is that Charles Leclerc was supposed to be the next big thing. He was a big deal. But Carlos Sainz is coming in his first year at Ferrari, and he's beating Charles. I feel like that's not talked about enough. I feel like Sainz is one of the most underappreciated drivers on the grid. He's been very consistent this year, and we've seen drivers with their new teams struggle, guys like Ricciardo and stuff. But Sainz has gone in there, and he's been pretty dang good. He's beating his teammates, so I think Sainz is having a tremendous year. And I think it's underappreciated. And I think this podium is great for him. Hopefully he can get a win soon. 4th, Daniel Ricciardo had a pit road issue earlier in the race during their pit stop. They were running top 5-ish and then had a slow stop. Ended up coming out of the pits behind Ocon, Stroll, Russell, and a few other guys. But the rain ends up helping them out. They come back and finish 4th. Solid day for them after the win 2 weeks ago at Italy. 5th place, Valtteri Bottas. Man, Mercedes literally, this is why I like Lewis Hamilton. I like Valtteri Bottas, but I cannot stand Mercedes because of this reason. Bottas took a grid penalty last week, which was necessary. From what I understand, that was necessary at Italy to take that grid penalty. He came back for a podium. This week, for some reason, 2 hours before the race, they announced, you know what? Bottas is going to start 15th because he's going to take a grid penalty because we switched his power unit or something. Why did they do that? He would have started 5th or 6th or something. I can't remember, but he was in the points. You're in a tight battle for the constructor standings. Why would you send him back there? You know why they sent him back there? Obviously they didn't officially state this, but it's speculated. It's guessed They sent him back there to hold off Max Verstappen, to try to hold him up, slow him down so that Lewis Hamilton could pull away, get more points, outpoint Max Verstappen. I mean, Verstappen passed him in like 5 laps. So, you know, I'm praying that Bottas just let him go as like a screw you to Mercedes. That would be hilarious. I doubt that happened. But still, it's so frustrating. Like, I just want Bottas to do good and Mercedes to stop screwing him. But he ends up getting 5th somehow. Imagine if he started up there. He could have won. Darn. Fernando Alonso, 6th place. He had a pretty solid day. Had a good qualifying session. Was up in the podium spots at one point, but with the rain, ends up 6th. 7th place, Lando Norris, the heartbreak of today's race. Almost got his first career win a couple weeks ago at Italy. Was running up front, but unfortunately for him, it was his teammate Daniel Ricciardo that was able to get the win. This week looked like Lando Norris's week. He got the pole. He lost the lead early, but he took it back, and he really just kind of held on to his own in this race. Had a pretty big lead over some of the guys behind him, thanks to George Russell holding everyone up because the Williams car is kind of slow, and the Ferrari and the McLaren were able to pull away by over 10 seconds on that first run before they pitted. And, you know, then at the end there, it was Lando and Lewis Hamilton. Lando Norris was holding his own. As I said, he was just kind of maintaining that gap between him and Lewis Hamilton, about 1 second. And Lewis Hamilton was never able to get close to trying to pass him until that rain came. And Lando Norris, unfortunately, decided himself to stay out, try to beat the rain, to try to hope that the rain would not intensify. But unfortunately for him, it did. He ends up with a 7th place finish. Great opportunity, but McLaren has shown in the past couple of weeks they have winning speed. They can win races. So it's got to be a promising sign for them. You've got to think that Lando Norris's time is coming very soon for a race win. He's shown it the past couple of weeks, but this week looked like it was going to be the week, but unfortunately for him, rain ruined any opportunity that he had to win, and of course, you know, his own decision. 8th place, Kimi. His first race back in 2 races. He got COVID right before the Dutch Grand Prix, missed the Dutch Grand Prix and the Italian Grand Prix, returns for Russia, and gets points. A solid day for him. He gets 4 whole real-life points today. And, yeah, that's great for Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo has not had a great year as a whole. Giovinazzi's had some good qualifying sessions, but they just haven't been able to put a race together. And Kimi was able to get them some points today. Great day for them. Very happy for Kimi. Woo. 9th place, Sergio Perez. Man, what the heck happened to him? Like, he was on the podium when the rain started. Like, I'm not even kidding. He was in the podium position when the rain started. I thought he was going to be a Perez podium, but he somehow ends up 9th. Did he spin or something? Did he stay out on the dries too long? I don't know, but he ends up 9th. That's a little upsetting. 10th place, George Russell. Good for him. Another point for him and Williams. Williams has actually been pretty decent this year, if you ask me. Like, everyone talks about the qualifying when Russell makes it to Q3 and stuff, which, yeah, that's good for them and stuff. But, you know, the race pace is definitely a little bit off compared to the qualifying for sure. But they've had good runs as a whole in qualifying and the race. You know, both him and Latifi. Like, you know, obviously you look at Belgium, that qualifying when Russell got on the front row, Latifi qualified like 9th or something in the rain. You look at races like, what was that race? I can't remember which race. Hungary, they got the double points. Latifi scored points in a Williams before Russell did. And then there was another race where they double pointed. I can't remember which one, but... And then even Italy, you know, they were both in contention for the points. I think only Russell got points, but Williams has been actually pretty decent this year when they've sucked the last few years. So, good for them. 11th place, Lance Stroll. Unfortunate for him. He got up to 4th early in the race, but ends up 11th. Vettel finishes 12th. Him and Stroll made contact like late in this race. Unfortunate for them, but obviously they survived. 13th, Pierre Gasly. Bad weekend for him. 14th, Ocon. 15th, Leclerc. He took a grid penalty. Bad day for him. He was up there with Max for a bit, but I guess the rain kind of ruined their opportunity. 16th, Giovinazzi. 17th, Tsunoda. 18th in his home race, Mazepin. 19th, Latifi DNF'd. I don't know what happened there. 20th, Mick Schumacher. They DNF'd. They showed that on TV, but I can't remember what it was. But, yeah, that's the Russian Grand Prix for you. The 2021 edition, Lewis Hamilton gets his 100th career win after Lando Norris has some problems due to the rain. Yeah, the rain. No fun if you are a Lando Norris or a Lando Norris fan. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this race. We had a lot of good battles. We had a lot of interesting leaders. Like Perez led some, Sainz led some, Lando led some. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton won, so he led some. But lots of different leaders, lots of different guys up front, lots of different strategies that really made this race interesting. And then, of course, the rain made the ending chaotic. I really enjoyed this race. Solid 9 out of 10 if you ask me. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the race in the comments. Tonight's the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas. I'm going to get some sleep, and then I'm going to watch that. So, yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.